What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, the weekly show where I go over the books that I picked up this week, and whether there's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. To start off with, I'm going to talk about Doom Patrol number 7, which has got the great art of Mike Allred on it, and it really was just a great reminder as to why I really enjoy Doom Patrol so much. And it really tied loosely into the overall scope of Doom Patrol, but it didn't really tie in nearly as much as Doom Patrol number 8, which came out this week. So Doom Patrol number 8 introduced Lotion back into the storyline as a very different kind of character at this point in time, and Casey Brink and Lotion make some questionable decisions. I'm not really sure where they're coming from, but it just reminded me how much I really appreciate the kind of world that Gerard Way is building around Doom Patrol. It's a really fun kind of experience. I'm really enjoying it a lot. Nick Darrington does a great job with the art, and it's one of the best, if not the best book coming out of Young Animal. I know there's some people out there that'll say Mother Panic is great, and I really love the Gotham Radio backstory, but I just like the little bit more wacky, crazy experience that Doom Patrol is. Really enjoying that book. Next up, we're going to talk about Superman number 30. So Superman 30 completes the, Fear Itself kind of storyline, which is where Parallax has really been absorbed by Superman. He's using his body kind of as a vessel to really take out his fear and wrath upon everybody else. But Sinestro is coming back and trying to claim Parallax. So this wasn't necessarily the strongest story in the world. It was very cool in terms of its visuals and its concept, but the real key to this particular issue was what Superman fears the most, and we find out that the fact that he's, his big fear, besides like the death of Lois Lane and various other things that could cause concerns, the ability to not save people. If he was unable to save the world, it'd be a very distraught kind of situation, but his real fear is just not being a good dad. Raising a son that doesn't necessarily appreciate him, or a son that doesn't feel appreciated, and that turns on him and, uses his powers for vengeful tactics against the dad that wasn't necessarily there because he was too busy out saving the world. So it's a very realistic kind of absentee father storyline, which I really kind of appreciated as far as that goes. It's a good ending to the particular book, and I'm really interested to see where the next storyline goes, because we did get some news that the Imperious Rex storyline, which is kind of alluded to at the end of this issue, wasn't really going to happen in the same kind of scheduled time frame. So it's interesting to see where the next issue is going to pick up. Then we're going to talk about Four Kids Walk Into a Bank. Four Kids Walk Into a Bank is pretty goddamn epic. I really like this book. Its release schedule has been crazy. It's taken the better part of a year, if not more than a year, for us to get to issue number 5, and issue number 5 is the end of the storyline. But this oversized issue of Four Kids Walk Into a Bank not only concludes the story, but teaches some very harsh lessons in reality. What happens when you try to rob a goddamn bank? And, there are some very interesting twists. The ending feels extremely earned. And I really appreciate everything that Matthew Rosenberg and Tyler Boss did to get this book to where it is. It's awesome. I would highly recommend that you grab the trade that's going to be coming out in October, simply because the collected works of Four Kids Walk Into a Bank, while it's short, it's going to be sweet. And it's a very simple, powerful story that really is about a daughter trying to connect with her dad and getting her friends involved in something that, well, no good kid should get involved in. That does take us to the next book, though, which is Seven to Eternity, issue number 9, and this is another one dealing with the issues of fathers and sons. And in the end of Seven to Eternity number 9, we do see the return of Zebediah Osidis and his ultimate dismissal of his son Adam and his decisions. There's a lot of really interesting storytelling that Rick Remender puts on in here, and he makes you think that the Mud King has a point. This King of Whispers. He's a very convincing one, because he hides his false narratives with truths that can very easily be pointed to in average everyday life. However, your goal is to strive to be better, and that's something that Adam is having he's having a really tough time dealing with at this point. However, I am just going to say it right now, Rick Remender and Jerome Obna, they are putting out one of the best comic books on the market right now with Seven to Eternity, so you're going to want to pick this bad boy up in a collected trade. They're going to be taking a 4-month hiatus, which is going to allow Obna to get a little bit more ahead of the storyline and really develop where it's going to go in the next arc. I know that this one's probably going to go about like 20, 30, maybe 40 issues, similar to where Black Science and Low are. I'm really excited to see where this goes, because there's a lot of story left to tell. Another book that I'm really excited about was Batman number 30, because it's dealing with Kite Man, and Kite Man, I swear to God, Tom King is using Batman not as a way to tell Batman stories, but as a way to tell interesting stories about characters that relate to Batman very loosely. It's crazy because Alfred is one of the best characters out of the Batman series, the main Batman series, because of the way Tom King writes him. And Kite Man became a situational story where, he had 7 frames in an issue early on in the series, and now he has his own dedicated 2-parter that falls into this large crossover of the War of Jokes and Riddles. And it's probably one of the best goddamn stories in this entire little arc piece. It's very personal, and I just appreciate everything about this Kite Man story because it's an average, everyday, relatable kind of person stuck in this battle between 2 seriously homicidal maniacs that Batman decides to side with. And you get an outside perspective on Batman's participation in this final sweep of the arc. It's a very interesting story. It's very powerful when told by Kite Man's perspective. And, the last few panels where Riddler and Batman are kind of interrogating Kite Man are just, they're heart-wrenching, man. They just, Clayman does a phenomenal job, and Tom King writes a really good scene, and I trust his artist to execute. So Batman number 30, probably one of the best books to come out of the War of Jokes and Riddles. So highly recommend you go pick it up. It's something else. The next thing we're going to talk about, though, is Generations Iron Man. So this is the story of Iron Man and Ironheart, and it's really about Riri Williams traveling into the future and meeting up with Sorcerer Supreme Tony Stark. So in the efforts to not necessarily tell her too much about her own future, we do see the resurgence of a few other specific characters, and I really like the debut or the resurgence of Franklin Richards in this whole perspective, as he's still a character out there in the Marvel Universe. I know that he's appeared in a few other things, but it's one of those nice callbacks to one of my favorite story arcs, which is the entire run from Jonathan Hickman on Fantastic Four through Secret Wars. It really gave me a soft spot in my heart for Franklin Richards and what he contributes to the Marvel Universe. Overall, this is Brian Michael Bendis trying to create a high level of importance for one of his character creations in Riri Williams, and I really hope that this bodes well for her future inside the Marvel Universe. With Legacy, there's a lot of questions as to whether she'll be retaining her position as Ironheart and what kind of role she'll play if Tony Stark is actually brought back to life, because we all know that after Civil War II, Tony Stark's body's on ice and his AI is already a main character in the Riri Williams version of Invincible Iron Man. With the ending of Infamous Iron Man, there's a lot of Iron people that really Marvel needs to make space for, so I'm concerned about her future and what this generation storyline really entails for that. It says that she's got a lot of importance. I don't know how Marvel's going to put her into the story. Finally, we're going to talk about Venomverse. So Venomverse War Story is the first book I want to talk about, and it's really a collection of 5 or 6 stories that tell the tale of other different Venoms that are going around. It's kind of like Edge of Venomverse, except condensed into one particular story. So you've got a Punisher Venomverse, and all this kind of stuff is going on. It's really kind of fun. It's like a tangential storyline that really engrosses you a little bit more in what's going on in Venomverse. However, if you're not really tied into the Venomverse storyline, or you haven't been reading Edge of Venomverse, it's completely unnecessary. Not necessarily that it's a bad story, it's just that it's a collection of stuff that's specifically tying into Venomverse and doesn't really provide a whole heck of a lot of forward movement in the actual Venomverse storyline. So it's one of those things where you can probably pass over on it, unless you want to kind of be a completionist and tie into the main storyline. So Venomverse itself is interesting. The introduction of the poison characters, how they kind of impact the overall Venom symbiote structure, the multiversal kind of thing. I've always kind of referred to Venomverse as kind of a spoof, or necessarily, they're kind of taking the piss out of the Spider-Verse storyline, this kind of multiverse hopping characterization. And I'm really hoping that Cullen Bunn not only, gives it a little bit of a farcical nature, but also very seriously interprets things. Because this writing of Eddie Brock, I really like the way that this character is portrayed, and I like the opportunities that having multiple different Venoms really kind of presents. However, you don't want to go too outlandish with the characters and what they really represent, or, who you're actually siding Venom with. It works with a certain style of character, but, just the kind of bonding of the symbiotes, it's nice to keep it inside the Spider family or people that is a logical choice on it. But, if you saw like an Unstoppable Wasp version of Venom, or you saw like a Moon Girl version of Venom, it would be a little bit too much. So I'm really hoping they keep this kind of core. They've already kind of dabbled with the Venom Spider-Man kind of conflict, and where the end of issue number 1 stops, it's really showing how the poisons can kind of be very anti-Venom overall. I mean, if that gives you any kind of indication of how it ends. But that's what I picked up this week. I did want to check out a few other books like Scales and Scoundrels. The thing is that my local shop didn't have it, so I'm going to have to pick it up digitally and then get back to you on my review for it. But I want to know what you guys picked up too, so if you want, hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything having to do with the world of comics.